Uranus as an archetype, for a quick review. In evolutionary astrology, it's called the individuated unconsciousness. And that contains 3 parts. It contains the past in all its detail of this life and our past lives. It's where we go with past life regression therapy or tuning into the Akashic records for ourselves. We go into our own individuated unconsciousness and look back. It is also the suppression of the present moment and anything we don't like going in our world. And this is where it's Saturn. Saturn being just inside Uranus and the individuated consciousness wants to keep a lid on everything. So it suppresses anything it doesn't want to look at, whatever it wants to ignore, pretend isn't there. Uranus bumps it up to the future. Saturn tries to stuff it down again, and back and forth they go. Uranus is also the blueprint of the future, what traditional astrology called that lightning bolt message or intuitive hit that we would get or vision that we would get. So when you look at it from the perspective of future-orientated messages, EA was always saying, or does say, you look at the element of repetition. So first of all, the messages can be clairvoyant, you see them, clairaudient, you hear them, or clairsentient, you sense them or feel them. And if that future message comes 1 to 2 times, it's either fantasy, wishful thinking, or it's way down in the future, 10, 15, 20 years from now. If it comes again and again and again, you're driving your car, you're mowing the lawn, you're making the bed, and you get this future-orientated message repeatedly, this is where your own soul is trying to liberate and move forward with its life. So just think about this over the next few months as, you know, Uranus is going to go into Taurus on May 15th. It's going to go retrograde August 7th at 2.5 degrees Taurus. And then it'll go back into Aries November 6th. So we're going to have Uranus and Taurus for 6 months in 2018. Just those first 6 months, mid-May to mid-November. Think about the messages that come again, relating to all of the Taurian archetypes. Money, resources, Scorpio polarity relationships, where you are insecure, everything that we're going to go through. Just remember, if you will pay attention to your own messages coming up into consciousness, you'll know how you are supposed to liberate and move forward with Uranus and Taurus. Now, most of us have a fear of change. Saturn, security, Uranus, insecurity. And Saturn wants it to just stay like it was. We've built up a routine. We've built up a marriage or a home or a job or comfort in whatever areas you look at it with resources and people, etc. And now Uranus is going to come along and say, oh, but there's something that needs to change with those resources. There's something that needs to change with relationships as well. Uranus is the deconditioning from all of the conditioning factors in our life. We're all born into a society. Many of us are born into religious and economic conditionings. And of course, we all have 1 or 2 parents unless we're in an orphanage or adopted. And so we have all these conditioning factors from the moment we take our first breath. Saturn wants that to again be routine and be security. And Uranus moving through the signs and Uranus moving through the houses of our chart shakes everything up. And the purpose is to break free from those conditioning factors and to actually liberate into who we uniquely are on an individual soul basis. This is where Uranus is known to be the courage to be a group of one. Traditional astrology is all about friends and like-mindedness with Uranus, and that is true. And we will gravitate towards other people who are like-minded with us politically, religiously, economically, etc., and then through that form that basis of friendship. But we must be very careful about conditioning all over again. So ultimately, Uranus as a group of one is learning how to be our own friend. And we'll see with Uranus and Taurus and self-reliance how it really is learning to rely upon ourselves and be who we are. Now in health and wellness, Uranus has rulership of the brain, the central nervous system, and with Mercury, it has co-rulership of the nervous system in general. And within the brain, Uranus has rulership of the dendrites. And the dendrites are those spots in our brain, those spaces or places in our brain that hold our memories and that hold new knowledge when we learn something brand new in some way. Uranus also has rulership of those synapses, which fire electrical messages in our brain. And that is where this phrase, what fires together, wires together, becomes so important. This is from Joe Dispenza. Evolve the Brain. Evolve the Brain, I think, was his first book. He was in the movie What the Bleep. He was one of the people interviewed, and he would say that he said that phrase several times in that movie. So when Uranus shakes things up, that which has been wired together is trying to be broken up. And that's why we have to make that new effort to fire something differently. We have to change those mental thought patterns to think differently than we have before to create something new in our life. Now, on a collective level, Uranus rules contagions. And that means when there is some type of disease that can be spread real easily between two people, somebody next to you sneezes and you acquire a viral imbalance from them, or as we shall see with Uranus and Taurus, is there going to be a mutation of some type of STD, sexually transmitted disease? We could see that coming out again. However, Uranus rules contagions on a broad level, and this is coming from the fact that Uranus is fixed air. Air, things pass through the environment of air, and fixed means we catch it, we have it, and it just spreads on a very broad collective level. Uranus is also the archetype of trauma, both in this present life and in our past lives. And trauma is an intense disturbance that is caused by either a shocking event or stress. And it can happen on a spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical level, and it can have a lasting effect. And when we experience a trauma, and especially if we suppress it, it can then start to dictate those subconscious behaviors. You know, someone who, I'm just trying to think, someone who burned in a past life, someone who, died in a house fire, or, unfortunately, got labeled as the pagan witch and burned in the fire prior, they can just have all these automatic reactions to fire, and a fear of it and not wanting to be anywhere near it. You can just think for a moment yourself, and you're going to know the areas in where you have all of these, subconscious reactions. Now, from evolutionary astrology's perspective, about 85 to 90% of souls are born with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. We've learned that as a buzzword with war. It's always existed, but it's actually something that's come into being recognized on collective levels. Uranus has specific rulership of mental trauma because of its rulership of the brain. And so any of the obsessive compulsive personality disorders, Uranus. Sociopathic behavior, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, any neuroses, any psychosis, all of those mental disturbances that can happen with the brain and the mind, Uranus will have a broad rulership of those. And of course, Uranus is where then we need to make the effort to change the effects of trauma. And this is where we can work alternatively with something like past life regression therapy or hypnotherapy, self-hypnosis tapes. We can work with traditional psychological, sociological therapies. You can work with some of your Native American shaman therapies. In other words, it doesn't matter what it is. You want to take what is unconscious or subconscious. You want to remember it. You want it to come up into the surface so that you can work to be healing it instead of trying to do that Saturnian suppression all over again. If you have transiting Uranus make an aspect to a natal planet in your chart, Uranus will have the effect of helping you remember trauma related to whatever the archetypes of that natal planet represents. And again, unique and different to each of us as to how this will take place.